Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. Hag Pesach Sameach, everyone. Yeah, that's true. It's still going on. Yes, it actually still is going on. And it's understandable. Well, yeah, that's a whole story in and of itself. How so? Well, we uh, we had a power failure right before starting the Seder, and so it kind of got thrown off schedule and everything. And so when did you finish? Well, we finished a little after midnight. Well, that's not bad. Yeah, okay, yeah. Maybe not for you, but yeah, it was kind of rough going. We had finally the lights and the power did come back on at 10:30, and we were able to complete the Seder with lights. So that was good. So new book tonight. Yeah, that's right. We are starting a new book tonight. This book is called Folktales of the Jews, Volume 2, from Tales from the Sephardic Diaspora. So this should be very interesting. We should get to it. Yeah, we should. I just want to say that Rabbi Anshel is back in the Dominican Republic now, and he is. We wanted to give him. He just got back today, and we wanted to kind of give him a day to rest and kind of just kind of relax and get back into the swing of things at home. And he will be joining us on Wednesday for the Torah study in depth. So we're going to be very happy to have him back. Let's check and see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald, we have Veronica, Marilyn, Paul, and Marshall, as usual. The Sergeant at Arms. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Sergeant at Arms, the guy who is in control of the chat room. So be nice to him. Yeah, okay. So we should probably get on with the stories. Get some wonderful stories. These are really good. Yeah, they are. So no, without further ado, let us get on with it. Let me get you onto your camera. It took long enough. Yeah. It's but we did make it. Yeah. Okay. So let us go ahead and begin whenever you're ready. Well, I am always ready. You know that. Okay. So let us start. These are the folktales of the Jews, Volume 1. Tales from the Sephardic Diaspora. Okay, so we begin with the first story. This is called The 10th for a Minion. It is by Saul Angel Malichi. In those days, long ago, when all the Jews lived in the old city, inside the walls, the 4 synagogues named for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai were the center of life, not only for prayer, but also for celebrations, and may heaven spare us for mourning. Crowds would gather in those synagogues for the installation of a chief rabbi, the Rishon LeZion, for prayers and for supplications in years of drought and so on. We should remember the names of those 4 synagogues. They were a cluster of adjacent buildings with passages between them. The first was the Istanbuli Synagogue, which was founded by Sephardic Jews originally from Portugal. It has been there for centuries. A door leads from it to the middle synagogue, the Al-Kal The in middle, two doors led from that, one into the Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai synagogue, and the other to the Talmud Torah synagogue. The middle synagogue was used as a shortcut by worshippers going to and from the synagogues. But it too had its regular congregation until the old city was captured by the Arab League in 1948. But let us go back to Talmud Torah Synagogue, whose name was later changed to what you might recognize it now as the Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the Prophet Synagogue. How did that come about? Let me tell you the legend about how its name was changed from the Talmud Torah to Eliyahu Hanavi, and it goes like this. One Yom Kippur Eve, the regular congregants, the Yehudim, assembled for the Kol Nidrei prayer. But there was only 9 men. The sun was setting, but no one else appeared. The small congregation, led by its cantor Chacham Benjamin, started to worry. But how could they begin Kol Nidrei prayer without a minyan? At the last minute, they saw an old Jew, his white beard down to his chest, leaning on his cane and coming down the stairs leading from the gate opposite the Bet El synagogue. Here was the man they had been waiting for to complete their minyan. At once, the cantor began to chant in a loud voice, Kol Nidrei Ve'esarei, the joy of fulfilling their religious obligation enwrapped them totally, and was intensified by the fact that the very last moment they had been able to conduct the evening service for Yom Kippur with a minyan, according to all the prescribed forms and regulations. The extremely pious stay in the synagogue all night on Yom Kippur, learning the biblical and Talmudic chapters that are relevant to the holiday. The service by the high priest in the Holy of Holies. They do not sleep at all that night. The 10 men remained in the Talmud Torah synagogue all night, never closing their eyes. When the sun appeared in the east, they began to recite the morning service at the earliest possible hour. All the worshippers were wrapped up in themselves, praying for atonement and forgiveness, that they be judged worthy of being inscribed for a good life and for peace. The old man sat in the corner, praying with intense devotion. After the Nilah service and the blowing of the shofar, all felt that a great burden had been lifted from them. When they finished the Revit, the evening service, they went outside to sanctify the new moon, the Kiddush Levana. They turned to each other and wished each other, Al Yadam, Clara, a good and bright year. But when they went to bless the old man too, he had vanished. Only then did the 9 worshippers realize that it was Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, who had been among them for 24 hours, so that they would be able to pray with a minyan. They changed the name of the Talmud Torah synagogue to the Eliyahu Hanavi synagogue. In one of the niches, they placed a chair on which they circumcised all the boys born in Yerushalayim and called it the chair of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. It is still there today. May his memory be for a blessing. And there you go. Now you know the story of the Eliyahu Hanavi synagogue. Okay, we go on to our next story. This is a little bit longer. Okay. This one is called The Wedding Attended by the Patriarchs. It's told by Gad Abadi to Reuven Na'ana. For many years, the sister of our master, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, of blessed memory, who was known as the Ari, was childless. She urged her saintly brother to pray for her and entreat God to end her disgrace. "Dear brother," she used to say, "you never turn anyone away empty-handed. Why then won't you heed your sister's tears?" But he never answered when she spoke to him in this vein. Finally, there came a day when she cried so much, with rivers of tears pouring from her eyes in an unbroken stream, that he took pity on her. "Believe me, sister," he told her, "I'm more concerned about you than you are about yourself. But what can I do? The gates of mercy are closed. You must beseech God yourself, and he will come to your assistance." These consoling words were like balm to her pain. It was as if her brother had hinted that all hope was not lost and her salvation would come soon. Weeks passed, and she came to her brother again. "Dear brother, didn't you promise me that with your own mouth that God would help me? But I still haven't been helped. Now, I'm not going to budge from this spot until you promise me that God will act speedily and give me a child who will live." She camped out in her brother's house, weeping day and night and giving him no rest. Finally, he told her, "Go home. In a year, you will be embracing a son. But I warn you, do not let yourself be carried away with pride and tell people, 'This is my wonderful son, the fruit of my womb.' If you don't listen to me and boast about your son, the sin is not mine, should disaster befall him." The sister went home, her heart brimming with love and joy. God remembered her, and she conceived and bore a son. God was with the boy, and he was very bright. When he was 3 years old, she brought him to Cheder, where he surpassed all the other students of his age. At 4, the whole town knew of his brilliance. By the time he was 5, he sat and learned Torah like an adult. Once his father was sitting with a group of men who were all bragging about their offspring. The father could not restrain himself. "I can't afford to pay tuition fees the way you can. Still, your sons would be put to shame by mine, who excels in the knowledge of Torah." The words were scarcely out of his mouth when the boy was struck deaf. When his mother saw the disaster that had overtaken her son, she remembered her brother's blessing and warning. Going to him, she fell at his feet and begged him to save her only son. Her brother, unable to withstand her entreaties, prayed to God. In a flash, the boy's hearing was restored. "Here is your son, healthy. Take him with you. But, again, I warn you not to boast of his virtues or beauty. If you love him, I have saved you this one time. If you come again, it will be in vain." She took the boy and went. One day, the mothers were sitting with her friends, who were all extolling their sons. "My son is only 10 and is already learning Gemara," said one. "My 9-year-old grandson is famous for his scholarship," countered another. Then Rabbi Yitzhak Luria's sister opened her mouth. "My son is still very young, but he already knows several tractates by heart. Nothing in God's Torah is beyond his grasp." No sooner had she spoke these words that her son went blind. When the mother perceived this new disaster, she cried bitterly. The tears streamed from her eyes when she remembered that there was no hope, because her only source of assistance was her brother, who would not show her mercy after she had failed to heed his repeated warnings. In the end, though, she resolved to go visit her saintly brother. Perhaps he would be moved if he saw her son's tragedy. Perhaps he would have mercy on him. She came to her brother and fell at his feet, weeping, "Please, my Lord, save us just this time." "Why did you let your mouth sin against the child?" he replied. "There is no hope." "Here, then, my son is in your house. Do whatever you want with him. I make you a gift of him forever. Now, I shall return home in anguish." Saying this, she fell on the blind son's neck and hugged and kissed him. Her tears flowed like rivers. Her brother tried to comfort her in her grief. "When my way finds favor with God, you will merit the chance to travel with me to your son's wedding. Together we shall embrace him lovingly." Her brother's words lifted her spirits. Leaving the boy in his uncle's house, she returned home. The boy lived with his uncle in his world of darkness. His parents were not there, and the members of the household remained aloof and paid him no attention. Time passed. One night, very late, his uncle came and sat down next to him. All about there was silence and stillness. The rabbi spoke gently to his nephew. Then he wrote an amulet and hung it around the boy's neck. Here, take your wallet and go wherever your feet lead you. The boy started walking. He wandered aimlessly until he reached a large forest. There, he lost his way among the trees and could find no way out. Suddenly, from afar, he heard voices that seemed to be getting nearer. So it was. Within a few minutes, some men reached him and took him to their house, where they treated him kindly. Stay with us until the time is ripe, and then we'll send you on your way. They were all saintly men, the patriarchs of the world, along with other holy men. The boy stayed with them, and they taught him Torah and Kabbalah until he became a great scholar, like a spring whose flow always increases. His eyes, too, regained their sight. When he reached the age of 13, the men told him, "You have been living among us and have learned everything you have the capacity to master. Now you have reached manhood. Take these clothes and put them on. Take care not to remove them until you see us again. When you leave us, you will come to a certain place where there lives a Jew who holds the lease on the mill. When you cross his threshold, you must immediately tell him you are a miller. But whatever he asks you, you must always answer, 'I don't know.' Even if he asks you about praying, which all Jews know well, you must say, 'I don't know.' Do this as long as you stay in his house, so that you will be thought as unlettered and a bore. Do what you must do in secret and pray when no one is looking. After a while, a man will come accompanied by a girl and ask whether you want to be his son-in-law. You must agree. If he asks whether you will follow him to his town, say yes and return home with him. But always take care not to remove these clothes until you see us under your roof. No matter how strongly you are urged to remove these garments, you must pay no heed and must not agree." The boy performed his teacher's bidding and did just as they had instructed him. Leaving the forest, he came to the miller, who received him cordially and hired him to work in the mill. "Aren't you a God-fearing Jew?" asked his master when he saw that the young man did not pray. Why didn't you pray yesterday or today? The boy feigned ignorance. I have no parents. My parents died when I was 8. Even before they died, it was difficult for me to bear the yoke of the Torah that my teachers taught me. After they died, when I wandered and begged for my bread without work, where could I learn to read? The news saddened the miller. Tomorrow, he said, I will bring you a tutor to teach you how to pray. The boy was overjoyed. One day, the miller entered the mill and saw the bins heaped to overflowing. He told his wife, he saw this heaven-sent blessing day after day, but it never occurred to him that God had blessed him on account of the boy. He told himself that his previous assistants had been thieves, whereas this boy was honest. The miller prospered and increased steadily in wealth and dignity, but he forgot to keep his promise to bring a tutor to teach the boy how to pray. Now, in a distant city, far from where our young hero was staying, there lived a great rabbi, renowned throughout the land. This rabbi had an only daughter, who was of marriageable age. But no suitor had been found who was deemed appropriate for her family's prestige. One night, the rabbi's father appeared to him in a dream. Know, my son, that your daughter's mate is living in a certain village where he works for the miller. Go there and take him for your son-in-law. He will be your daughter's husband. And the rabbi's wife and daughter had the same dream. But to his granddaughter, the old man added, if you don't marry him, you will die. When you see him, you will be appalled, but pay no attention to his appearance. Man sees only what is visible, but God sees into the heart. In the morning, they all told their dream to one another. It must be true, they concluded. So the rabbi and his daughter journeyed to the village to find the miller. He received them with great respect and invited them to dine at his table. During the meal, the rabbi asked his host about his business. I make my living from the mill, replied the host. The workers I used to have were all thieves. But finally, the Holy One, blessed is He, brought me a young man, quite illiterate and unlearned, who is totally ignorant but totally honest. He doesn't touch anything that is mine. Whereas once the flour never even filled half of the barrels, ever since he came, they are overflowing day after day. But my heart goes out to the young man. I have never seen anyone like him. He doesn't even know the blessings over bread. And we are going to pause here, and we are going to take our break, and when we come back, we're going to find out what happens to this boy. So, if you can please get that. Yeah, okay, I got it. Okay. So, we will be back in 6. Please stay tuned.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back, just as we promised. Okay, let's find out what happens to this young man. Okay. The rabbi asked the miller to call the boy so he could see him. But the host replied that the boy had already eaten and would not want to take a break during work hours. The next day at dinner time, the young man entered the house and sat down at the table, without greeting the others as cultured people do. When the rabbi saw the boy, with his clothes he was wearing, and his coarse manner of speaking, his heart fell. The rabbi tried to talk to him to find out whether he was really like that or only disguising himself, but he could not penetrate the boy's heart. "I don't know how," he answered. "My parents died when I was young. Even when they were alive, I was never a good student. Now I have no tutor to teach me God's ways. True, my master promised to hire a tutor for me, but he never did. Please, sir, would you be so kind as to get my master to hire a tutor for me? I'm ready to teach you Torah if you will come with me." "I will do whatever you tell me," replied the boy, "if you will teach me to read. Will you come to my house with me? If the matter was decreed by God, I will follow you." The rabbi went to his host and told him that the boy was leaving his house. When the miller's wife heard this, she wanted to throw the rabbi out. "Is this the way you repay our hospitality," she asked, "by turning our worker against us?" The miller seconded his wife's assault and quarreled with the rabbi until the latter was compelled to pay them 100 gold coins. Nevertheless, they were very sad to see the young man go and wished him well when they parted. On the way home, the rabbi said to the boy, "Let me buy you new clothes before we get to the city. It bothers us that you are wearing such garments." The young man did not reply. But when the rabbi gave him the new clothes, he declined to put them on. "I will do whatever you tell me, except for one thing. My clothes must remain on my body. No one may remove them." "But we are respectable and distinguished people," protested the rabbi. "I want to give you my daughter's hand in marriage. It is not appropriate that my future son-in-law should wear such clothes." But nothing the rabbi and his daughter said had the slightest effect. The young man paid no attention to them. They gave up when they saw that all their efforts were in vain. The rabbi and his daughter arrived home, feeling very sad. When they reached the town, they saw townsfolk coming out to greet them, and they felt acute embarrassment. Is it possible, the townsfolk whispered among themselves, that a rabbi, a leader of the community, should choose such a worthless and reckless young man to be the husband of his only daughter? They simply could not believe their eyes. The rabbi's wife, too, was distressed when she saw the young man seated next to her husband and daughter. But she said nothing, for she believed in the dream and that her daughter's life depended on this match. The young man settled down in the rabbi's house and learned Torah with him. The rabbi was delighted to see that the boy paid close attention and that his efforts were bearing fruit. He stopped pressing him about the clothes. When he becomes a scholar, he will wear the rabbi's mantle in any case, he thought. But the years passed, and the young man still had not removed his rags. Finally, the rabbi spoke to him about it. Take off these clothes and put on garments that are more appropriate for a scholar. But the young man refused. These clothes are dear to me, and I cannot take them off. I cannot comply with your request. The rabbi began to entertain grave thoughts and became extremely grim. But then he was visited with a dream. A precious vessel has reached you, he was told. You must learn how to use it. Do not look at his clothes. But one must not rely on dreams, he told himself. I will call the girl and ask for her answer. So he called his daughter. Will you go with this young man and be his wife? If the matter was decreed by God, and it seems good to you, I will not look at his appearance, she answered, but will do my father's bidding. In that case, said the rabbi, let us set a day for the ceremony, and let us get everything ready for the bride and groom for the auspicious day. They spoke with the groom, who also agreed to the date. They got new garments ready for both the bride and the groom, firmly believing that on his wedding day the groom would discard his tattered rags and put on splendid clothing befitting the rabbi's son-in-law. When the Sabbath of Delights, the Sabbath before the ceremony, arrived, the rabbi and his wife brought the groom fine clothes and asked him to wear them. But he refused to accept them. The bride, too, cried and implored him to take off his old rags and put on new clothes, but he would not listen to her either. If you won't take off those clothes, I won't marry you, she told him. Do as you wish, he answered calmly. Sabbath passed under a heavy cloud of grief. But the rabbi and his family comforted themselves that on the wedding day itself, the groom would certainly put on his new clothes. The wedding day arrived. The guests began to arrive. All the family members of the wedding party were arrayed in their finest. But the groom was still sitting in his old rags, and refusing to change them for new ones. The bride sat as if in mourning. The townsfolk were all dejected, overcome by a sort of silent stupor. Late in the afternoon, a shepherd entered the rabbi's house, a long staff in his hand. In his rustic voice, he asked whether so-and-so, son of so-and-so, was in the house. Yes, there is a fellow here by that name, they answered, but we do not know whether he's the person you are seeking. Let me see him, replied the shepherd. Yes, I think he's my comrade. We lived together in the same house for many years and had the same master. We shared the good times and the bad. I've come to see him on his wedding day. When they heard this, they ran off to tell the groom that the shepherd was waiting for him. The shepherd came up to him joyfully and gave him a friendly clap on the shoulder. The groom responded in kind, and they hugged and kissed each other. Then the groom turned to the rabbi's wife. Would you be so kind as to bring my friend here a glass of brandy, the strongest and finest in the house? When she heard this, the rabbi's wife felt as if she had been stabbed to the quick. Instead of answering, she burst into tears. Her sobs could be heard throughout the house. Little too far. Yeah, just a little bit too far. But the other members of the family, thinking they might be able to use the shepherd to persuade the groom to put on new clothes they had provided for his wedding day, began to flatter him. They gave him a first-class meal and excellent wine to drink. When he had finished eating, they asked him to try to get the groom to take off his filthy rags and to put on clothes befitting a groom. Don't worry, the shepherd reassured them. He's my friend and will do whatever I tell him. I can promise you that he will put on other clothes before he goes to stand under the wedding canopy. Still, I can't give you what you want. There's only one thing I can do. I will get him to put on a new tunic and shoes. Now, he took the tunic and the shoes from them and brought them to the groom, who put them on at once. All were heartened by the sight. Seeing that the shepherd had such influence over the groom, they asked him to appeal to his friend to put on the outer garments as well. Wait a bit, he said. When the rest of the wedding party comes, they will dress him in the outer garments. So they all waited. Every passing minute seemed like a year. Finally, they decided it was time to lead the groom and the bride to the wedding canopy without waiting for the rest of the wedding party. But the shepherd objected. Why all this haste? Did the groom grow on the tree? He has a mother and an uncle and many friends and relatives, including the rabbis and sages who taught him. And there are other righteous men who will come to share the joy of his wedding. Why can't you wait for the groom's attendants to arrive? They all stood there astonished by the news, quite unable to believe what they were hearing. They sat down again, and waited for the guests from the groom's side, but there was no sound of anyone on the way. The people sat there, waiting, all of them exhausted and anxious for the guests to arrive, but there was no sign of them. They waited and waited. Finally, seeing no one was coming, they all went back home. Only a small number of invited guests remained in the rabbi's house waiting. Suddenly, just at midnight, there was the sound of galloping horses and dozens of carriages and an orchestra playing beautiful music. In a flash, the shepherd turned into a wedding jester and began to entertain the wedding party. His crook became a magic wand, and he put on a show of wonders for them. Then he announced, "Everyone outside to greet the important guests who are arriving now." Everyone went outside and was overjoyed to see the guests. The whole town was agog with the sound of trumpets and drums. The shepherd turned jester turned to greet the guests. As soon as they crossed the threshold, he called aloud in turn, "Welcome, Rabbi Abraham. Welcome, Rabbi Yitzhak. Welcome, Rabbi Yaakov. Welcome, Rabbi Moshe. Welcome, Rabbi David. Welcome, Rabbi Eliyahu." The jester greeted by name each of the righteous men who entered the house, including Rabbi Yitzhak Luria and his sister, the mother of the groom. After he had greeted all the guests, the shepherd jester announced in a loud voice, "Rabbi David, the dean of musicians, will sing hymns in honor of the groom so-and-so of the son of so-and-so." Such beautiful music filled the house, music whose like has never been heard. When the song was finished, the groom's mother fell on her son's neck and kissed him, and then on the bride's neck and kissed her. Tears of joy streamed from her eyes. Then the shepherd took the princely garments from the father of the bride and announced, "Rise, Rabbi Abraham," and helped the groom on with his new coat. The oldest man in the group stood up and helped the groom on with his coat. The shepherd continued, "Rise, Rabbi Yitzhak," and help put on his sash. Another man in the group stood up and tied the sash around the groom's waist. "Arise, Rabbi Yaakov," and place the hat on the groom's head. When the groom's hat was in place, the jester called out, "Rise, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, uncle of the groom, and help him put on his mantle." Rabbi Luria did so. When all the honors had been completed, the jester turned to the bride and groom and blessed them before they went to stand under the wedding canopy. Then he called out, "Rise, Rabbi David, play as only you can, and let them walk to the canopy to the sound of your music." The attendants took the bride and groom and led them under the canopy. After the ceremony, the groom delivered a brilliant homily on the Torah and Kabbalah, and each guest added a remark of his own. Finally, they all danced mitzvah dancing. When the dancing was over, the guests vanished, as did the shepherd. No one knew what had become of them. Only Rabbi Yitzhak Luria remained alone with his sister and the mother of the groom. Rabbi Luria stayed until after Shabbat. Then he returned home, but the groom's mother remained there and lived with her son, content and gratified until the end of her days. So may God grant us the merit to raise our sons to learn Torah, to stand under the wedding canopy, and to perform good deeds. Amen. May it be His will. And that, my friends, is going to conclude the stories for tonight. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I enjoyed reading them to you. Don't forget that on Wednesday night, Rabbi Ariel and Rabbi Ansel is back, who will be here for the Torah study in depth. And don't forget that the last day of Pesach is on Shabbat. And then right back here on Monday for more stories from the Sephardic diaspora. Until then, we shall simply say, Laila Tov.